So, we'll focus in, we'll listen to this Cho chant. So we'll hold awareness together for a few minutes. So we can turn it off now. Okay, now we'll just press that little button. Great. Welcome everybody. We'll just focus, close our eyes for a few moments. A little infomercial. On Saturday, May 17th, Lama Nurul is coming here. And we'll have the Mahamudra Teachings Empowerment in the morning. And in the afternoon, we'll have the Manjushri Empowerment. And the Manjushri Empowerment is the empowerment of the personification of gnosis, personification of direct perception. And of course, the Mahamudra is one of a method of entering into awareness in a very direct and complete way. Then Sunday morning, we'll have the Chode Empowerment. And the Chode Empowerment is this very ancient practice really for opening the body and the sheaths of the body and cracking through the various energies that we can experience the openness of the great expanse. And he'll give that empowerment in the morning, and then in the afternoon he'll do some teachings on that. So it should be a really packed weekend, and it's really, he's so generous to be coming and doing all this. Hope you can definitely make it. These empowerments are ways really of invocation or of helping bring forth within us through transmission these archetypical qualities. Huh? So we'll focus in again for a few moments. Let's extend through our bodies. We can extend all the way down, all the way up. Amplifying that column of energy. And then we can extend to each other, which is the immediacy of our situation. Extending the field, which opens up the situation where it's less dense. And we extend to each other inside to inside, directly. As Bodhidharma said, the 6th century master, beyond words and letters, there's a transmission. It doesn't belong to any tradition, no ownership. It's the very nature of human awareness itself, and that is the Buddha, or Shiva, whatever metaphor you'd like. So it is humanness. Then let's extend to our ancestors, of whom you and I are expressions, the generational field. the light extending to the light. Or the energia extending to the energy. Then we'll extend to the great teachers and yogis who have had in our life. Those people who embody the awareness so explicitly, completely, that the invisible becomes visible. Extend to them in mutual support. Then we'll extend to all those different traditions that we participate in. And nowadays, with geography being so tiny, and we can feel the traditions mixing in our bodies as we become universal people. The tribal boundaries thinning. Disintegration followed by integration. And then we'll extend to that dimension of our own awareness, which is archetypical primordial. And we'll extend to that expression of that dimension, the energy vortex, as Majustri, which is that capacity of personifying gnosis, direct perception, awareness. And then we'll just rest for a while. And then we'll pick up where we were at last week. And also over the past couple of weeks, I've asked everyone to, if they wouldn't mind, looking at or reading a little bit of that Heidegger paper on liberation. So perception. And then we asked also to look at the paper on on views of Eastern philosophy that may negate personalism and humanism. It's might want to take a look at that. And then the paper on presence as Dzogchen. You don't have to do that, but you may find it fun. So last week we were exploring the topic of fragmentation. Remember that? And the freeing of luminous spaces for embodiment. And I might touch that again today, because it really was on disintegration and reintegration. Do you remember that a bit? And this necessary unfolding as we unfold in our life and circumstances, and awareness itself unfolds within us and around us. There's this process of disintegration and then reintegration. And we can look at all the different developmental epochs. You can look at Erik Erikson's work or any of the different developmental frames as places of establishing, and then that establishment of the system or person starts to disintegrate, and as that disintegration takes place, there's a renewed integration, right? And if you just think in your own life, the different phases you've been through, the different epochs you've been through, both from within your body changing and the circumstances, there's stability, and then there's disintegration, and there's reintegration, and disintegration, and reintegration in an ongoing way. We even looked at death itself as a disintegrative experience of this time and place continuum, and the next step being reintegration as when one passed through deathless awareness. Say yes if you remember that and that makes sense to you. So we're going to go through that again a little bit, but before I do that, I would like just to make a little bit of discussion, and we'll pick this up next week to try and have some order here, on the issue of the distinction between our mind and awareness, or between our mind and primordial knowingness, and why that distinction is really useful. And I'm just going to give a little brief historical summary, and then we'll come back to this. Because when you and I cannot differentiate our mind from our awareness, then this disintegration, reintegration phase is going to be like shit. You with me? And there'll be suffering. But if we can differentiate our mind from our awareness, and we can locate ourselves in awareness, then the transitions and disintegrating experiences all the way through our life will not be so fragmentary and so much suffering. Say yes if you understand this. Everybody understand this, what I'm saying? And it's really both important in just our ordinary life and life as psychotherapists or whatever we're doing, where to be, where to live, and how to establish ourselves. So I'll go back to Dzogchen just to start off with. And in that tradition of Buddhism, and again, you might want to read a paper called, if you want to, A History of Emptiness Over Time, or something like that, and how the understanding of what emptiness is changes radically from Sakyamuni Buddha's teaching, and it goes through the tantras, and then it ends up in Dzogchen, right? It's a very... So going back to Dzogchen, one of the main leaps of Dzogchen was beginning to experience that our mind, thinking, feeling, sensation, memory, is different than awareness. And in their cutting through techniques, their attempts to cut right to the heart of the matter with a lot of not having a lot of prerequisites and all that, to cut through, that if you can begin to suspend your mind just a bit and begin to experience this unfolding of this awareness within you and through you and beyond you, and you start to live in awareness, and as you live in awareness and you go through these naturally disintegrative, reintegrative states, you will have a sense of ongoing continuity of beingness through the whole thing. And you will be less damaged. And even that great psychiatrist from Boston, whose name I always forget, which is the one? Van der Kolk, yeah. Actually understands that with lots of research on trauma, which is disintegrative states, that if a person can be in awareness, then there's less damage. In fact, he has his people there kind of do not unlike what we do here, where the people hold awareness, all the therapists hold awareness for a particular period of time and try and stay in awareness and articulate their states of awareness. So when you start to have this capacity to differentiate your mind, because the mind is the unfolding narrative of our life story, right? And both in memory and experience. So this capacity to differentiate our mind from awareness allows us to relocate ourselves in awareness, and then we can begin to experience our life and the unfolding of our life with our mind and through our mind in this ongoing way. Say yes if that's making sense. And as you and I start to live in awareness, and we'll go more of this, you start having direct perception, and you start experiencing within yourself this awareness field. You start experiencing within the person who just walked in the room that awareness, and you feel that underlying indivisibility in an ongoing way, and both with yourself and your mind itself. Also, you begin to experience your mind itself as a manifestation of awareness. And you feel the circumstances around you as manifestations of this primordial state. So you feel this within non-duality, which is the oneness or the indivisibility. You experience duality. And through duality, you experience non-duality. That is the whole deal in a little point. And then as you go through this, some of the early texts, the Gadaba Tantra, this is not necessarily for everybody, but the Gadaba Tantra was one of the first great tantras that really began to speak this way about the difference between mind and awareness, and the focus on awareness, and the purity of awareness, and the expansion of awareness, and the freedom of being awareness are the natural liberation that whatever I am experiencing in the awareness state, I'm becoming free and more embodied in awareness. And one of those texts was the one on the goddess. What's that one's called? The sovereign, one of those root texts. And also the other one, the more recent one, the marvelous state. So those are three root texts, okay? And in these texts, they're always speaking about I am. The text itself is describing herself or himself or that self. And you begin to experience a re-enholding of this vast wholeness, vast knowingness, huh? And then this goes on in the 11th century. You have Ronzamba, a very famous great master who wrote The Divinity of Appearances. And so appearances start becoming the path. It's not that they're just non-existent, never was, never will be, but the world of appearances start having some relevance to what's going down now. And then following him comes Longchenpa, and Longchenpa was the master that made the most of the importance. If you make this distinction between your mind and your awareness, you will be on a fast trip. You with me? No intermediary. Do not go to jail. Just keep if you make that shift, that is the goal. Just to be able to make that shift and sustain it in an ongoing way where you are in this awareness state, in this base, this ground of awareness, and you're living in this awareness state. You feel the space, you feel the energy, you feel presence, you feel the light. And here the light doesn't necessarily mean green light, blue light, or red light, but you feel knowingness itself. And as you live in this knowingness itself, you will have the knowingness of direct perception, knowing awareness in everyone, everything, but also the knowingness illuminates your mind that you have discrimination of character and situations. Right? Now, and then following Longchenpa, and next week we'll go deeper into this. Following Longchenpa, you have Yagmag Lingpa picks it up, and then you have Durjam Lingpa picks the same thing up, and he brings this both in terms of the archetypical dimension, he brings it into terms of appearances, and the actuality of existence and liberation through the actuality of existence. That just my life as it is the path of freedom, huh? And so there's a lot of changes take place in this where it actually differs the tantras in certain ways, and we'll go back into that next week. You guys following this? Now, and you look at that, and as you practice that, you start to feel a cumulative experience that starts to take place. Synchronicity starts to take place in your life, and what they call magical realism. Huh? You're no longer caught into idealism, nothing exists, or you're not caught into concrete operational realism, which is very materialistic, not unlike some of the early writings of the Buddha, where it's only just dependent origination. There's no base, there's no energy, there's no light of awareness. You follow what I'm saying? So you start living in the intermediate area more and more and more. Then we're going to shift from that, and also in Kashmir Shaivism, which is like a brother or sister to Dzogchen. They're totally, and I've asked you guys to read that book if you wanted to. Hridayam, the heart of the yogini. You don't have to read this stuff, but if you have a lot of time on your hands, the heart of the yoginity. Swami Muktananda's work is exactly the same thing. And again, his admonition, as I was once told very personally by him in a stunning moment, you should get beyond your mind. And you should get beyond right and wrong, get beyond good and evil, better and best, truth and falsity, get beyond your superego. Because a lot of yogis understand, not unlike Freud understood, that people live in their superego. Out of annihilation anxiety, deprivation anxiety, we try and gain safety in being right, and in being the sanctification of the superego, both personally and institutionally. And when it's sanctified institutionally, it's called religion or politics. You guys follow this little rap here? And so this capacity to get beyond the mind, then he followed up with this statement. And if you can do that, then you will live in awareness, life after life, and death after death. You know, which he calls the self, And sometimes in the early Buddha, they were very preoccupied with the non-self. With Longchenpa and others coming along, this starts to be ameliorated because they understand that the self is primordial awareness manifesting in you and I as you and I. That's a lot in a breath, but we're all together with this. So then we go into phenomenology, which is another interesting thing. This is a little summary, where we've been. And phenomenology, you look at, is the same thing. Phenomenologists became preoccupied with what is this awareness thing? What is this awareness? Now, initially, Husserl started off with that. And Husserl and Freud, I know I'm going fast, but this is a summary. Some of you guys are new. But Husserl and Freud had the same teacher named Brentano. And the same teacher, Brentano, was a very interesting character because he understood that psyche and mind were not the same thing, and he also understood that psyche was invisible. So all these practices, looking and trying to find your mind, which you're often asked to do, you're not going to find anything. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just not visible because it's not a thing. Psyche is not a thing. I can find things inside of me, like a pain right here, a little gallbladder, or whatever it might be. Something's wrong, help. So, but if I look inside my own awareness, I'm going to find no thingness. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means it's no thingness. And that was the great contribution of Brentano. With that, Husserl starts running one side with, and so does Freud, because Freud gets very interested in psyche. What is psyche? And how does it unfold in this world and organize so much that my wee little mind doesn't know what in the hell's going on here? Or as St. Paul says, I do what I would not do and don't know why I'm doing it anyway. You with me? So help me. You guys follow this? Because with the unconscious of psyche, our mind, rational mind, is a tiny little midget. So Husserl takes over this task, and Husserl starts beginning to try and study the mind through becoming aware of the mind, and he's aware of the mind, and he's not unlike us when we become aware of our mind, and we're witnessing our mind, or we're experiencing our mind, but we're still aware of our mind. And how is the mind constituted, and how are objects constituted, and how is that sense of subjectivity constituted? But he was still in a very bound place, a tiny box of the mind. Then he started to make a shift, being influenced by his student Heidegger and others, and he began to make what he called the second reduction. And the second, I have a lot of time on my hands, so the second reduction is where he went in. The first reduction was, I'm going to try and gaze into you and to my own mind. I'm just going to be a gazer. It was gazing, actually, not unlike Dzogchen, which is also gazing, right? And he starts gazing, but he's gazing in his mind through his mind. You with me? And you can only go so far when you can do that. And then he made his first reduction was, I'm going to try and gaze without prejudice. I'm going to gaze I'm forgetting about whatever I was told, whatever I'm holding that in abeyance, and I'm just gazing into Kate. I'm gazing into Kate to see what manifests itself without all my prejudices. Oh, she's this. Oh, she's that. I'm just gazing to see what appears and what's manifest and what I'm experiencing, which is the essential of phenomenology. He makes the second reduction when he then gives up his mind. Suppose I give up my mind. I suspend my mind and gaze through what then is manifesting. Say yes if you're understanding this, right? So all this understanding doesn't mean anything unless we practice it, right? So he starts gazing into whatever he's appearing, but from awareness. He's suspending his mind. Heidegger does the same thing, and he suspends the mind from the very beginning and just experiences himself that he's this awareness in the world. Dasein means like great expanse, this openness in the world. And he called his mind, not ontology, but the other word. Anyway, he went beyond his mind. Husserl also goes beyond his mind, and in this awareness, he begins to discover something called intersubjectivity, which a lot of analysts are aware. But most of the time, analysts are aware of intersubjectivity. What they really mean is, you're thinking about me, I'm thinking about you, thinking about me, you thinking about me. Kind of a Langian thing, but it's all in my mind. Oh, you say this about me, I feel this about you, and it's somewhat kind of reflecting our childhoods together. So it's a tautology, but I'm still in my mind. What Husserl brought forth, and later began to influence therapists, was that as I suspend my mind, I go into this awareness state. This awareness state, I can feel in myself and in you as I gaze into you. You with me? And he started feeling. So at that point, with the second, he goes into true intersubjectivity, which we love practicing because at that point, we can feel the indivisibility of our awareness with another's awareness. And it has many implications in how we survive in this world, right? Attunement and things like that. Say yes if that's making sense for you. And I'll come back in a little while to questions. So then Heidegger takes the same trip also. And Heidegger takes the trip initially as enunciating, well, what are the factors that we know about awareness? And forgetting about the mind. And one is attunement, but most of all what started in is that when you enter awareness and you actually begin to have awareness, you begin to realize you are going to die. And kids know that, 3 and 4 years old, begin to realize Auntie disappeared. This disappears. We really begin to experience the phenomena of appearance and disappearance. And we begin to slowly but surely begin to experience this is going to happen to everyone I love. It's going to happen to me. And I just don't get it. How can this be? This is a fucked up situation. You with me? Maybe you didn't think that, but I did, okay? And so that arises. So death and identity and the relating to the appearance and disappearance of phenomena was fundamental. In that way, his understanding is not unlike Buddha's understanding. Also, there's this whole phenomena of appearance and disappearance, disintegration and reintegration. Follow where we're at? Another phenomenologist, running along with, was Merleau-Ponty. And Merleau-Ponty's great contribution is that all this takes place where? It takes place in our body. It takes place in Heidi's body, in Elizabeth's body, in Skip's body. This is an embodied experience. And if we try and leave the body and just dissociate, let me out of here, let me get out of this place too soon, we're not going to be very happy, and we're going to be even more vulnerable, because being in altered states of consciousness is fun for a while, but really and truly it doesn't last. And being dissociated opens us up to all kind of suffering in of itself. It can help us with suffering in the immediacy of the situation, when we're having, let me out of here. But that dissociation, when it becomes more permanent, a lot of my resources are lost, including the sense of this primordial awareness field. So embodiment and the unfolding of the embodiment and feeling the field phenomena through the body is bliss. So that's another contribution, okay? So that brings us up to where we're at right now, which also then I'm going to bring Winnicott, who was influenced by this, and also Gestalt therapy, which many of us know and love. Okay. You guys follow this story? Say, raise your hands if this is making integration. So in Gestalt, first of all, Winnicott comes along, and up to this point before Winnicott, the self was simply a representation of my personality. It was sort of like self-esteem, what I think about myself, how I represent myself, or even worse, how you represent me to me, which is Lacanian, where we started last time, getting caught in the mirror. So it's my representations. There's no base, really. I'm just a chunk of representations. You with me? And if I can clean up my representations, and I will be okay. Well, not so sure about that. So Winnicott comes along, not unlike Jung also in another way, and begins to realize that as long as we're in our mind, suffering and change is really hard. No, some change can be good because some of the cognitive behavioral stuff can help me change some of my ideation and my representations, which is good. But foundationally, it can only go so far. So he began to realize, first discovering in himself, this transitional space, this openness, this intermediate area where he would feel potentiality, but he wasn't quite in his mind, he wasn't quite in thinking, he wasn't quite in his affective states, he wasn't quite in sensation, he wasn't even quite in memory. He was in this space. Perhaps you can feel it right now. This open space. And there was energy in it. And knowingness, and some freedom. So he began to integrate a fundamental change in psychoanalytic understanding about transitional space, or the self, which is not the same as our ego. Now the ego is something really you want to have, because if you don't have an ego, you're an amoeba and you're going to get here. You can't do anything. But he understood that the mind was not the whole story, and that people had a place of refuge, where they feel like home when they entered into it. He also equated it with the heart, not unlike the yogis, the heart essence. And he also understood when you and I could enter transitional space, there's a time we could spend in formlessness. Formlessness, right? A formless state. Maybe he was reading Eastern philosophy at this point, on the side at night in his little room. But the formless state of awareness, which is intrinsically nurturing and alive and helps recapture foundational experience. Say yes if you're understanding this. And many people can have trouble changing because they're located in their mind alone, which is okay up to a point. But many people are located only in one function alone. So many of us are located simply in the thinking function. Okay? And we think everything is rational. And since everything is not rational, it causes a great deal of pain. You with me? Or some get located into sensation alone, like what pain does. And it captivates us. So how to free ourselves from being so organized by pain alone? Or some are just lost in affective states, in their, I love you, I hate you, I love you and hate you, I hate you, now I love you, and a lot of variation in that theme, okay? And then some are caught only in memory. We live in memory, the good old days, or the bad old days, but never quite here and now. So he began to understand that if one could enter into transitional space, which is awareness itself, then liberation could begin for that person to become free of being located in the trauma of the past, cumulative memory, organizing my perceptions right now. But I had to be free to be in this awareness state and tolerate it. And also part of the role was helping someone helping us hold these states through attunement. Not our mind, but awareness itself. And in that way, radicalize certain aspects of psychotherapy, and people entering into transitional space in order to change when they could not change before. Say yes if that's making sense to you. Now, in Gestalt therapy also, which is related to this, the same things took place because Pearls and then later people like the Posters and a lot of these great early Gestalt therapists, they took a number of things together. They took psychoanalytic thinking, a la Winnicott. They took Gestalt field theory because they start realizing this awareness is a field and that it goes beyond the body. So one of the things they went to was to field theory because it was the closest phenomena that articulated their experience, right? Generational fields, internalizations are not just in my mind, they're generational, they are live here and now, okay? They also took the importance of trying to shift out of the analytic mind, to use their language, and enter into the awareness state. And if we could enter into the awareness state, whether it's via play or enactments, but the awareness state is always where? It's always in the present. Even Dojang Rinpoche is in his Nundros, what people do to enter and become Buddhists. It says, what is the Buddha? the Buddha is nowness, right? The Buddha is nowness, right? So you want to think this way, right? You want to demythologize certain things. And so you enter nowness, and if you can remain in nowness, you'll be in awareness, and everything will arise for you, and you work on experiences experientially, in the felt sense of what is happening now. Not that the context doesn't help. Context helps. But you work on everything via experience. So experience in all these traditions, whether it's Buddhism, phenomenology, Dzogchen Buddha phenomenology, it is working with experience to liberate ourselves from experience through experience. So Gestalt therapy had this very big step of, as Pearls would say, leave your mind, go beyond your mind, get out of your mind and stay with what's happening now. He was a very narcissistic personality, so it organized some of his teachings also. But you take the best and leave the rest, pretty much with everything, including this. So we're pausing now. So that's an introductory going back to this paper. Why is this an introductory going back to this paper on disintegration? Heidi? Heidi's working for all of us. Huh? Why this introduction to start to go back into seminar and fragmenting body and freeing of luminous spaciousness to be embodied? Why do we emphasize this so much? Maybe. Why? Sit with how he's going into her body in that process. We do the same thing. And if we connect to her, connect to each other, this process will work better. We won't be located in our mind so much.
Well, I'm not saying anything you didn't already say, but
okay.
But it does seem that hanging into the mind only doesn't give us access then to the base of the awareness.
What must that be like for a person? Is your mic on? What must that be like for a person when they're going through a natural disintegration state and there is no base?
It's terrifying.
That is the first word, I think. The first word is terror. The first word, no matter who you are, where you are, if you do not have the base of awareness, then the disintegration, whatever that might be, change itself. Because another word for change is disintegration and reintegration. Got it? Got it? Got it. It's terrifying. Terrifying. That is one of the basic agonies of being a human being.
Perhaps adding to what you just said, then clinging to the mind alone actually makes it impossible then. Clinging to the mind alone makes it impossible to actually kind of cut through what needs to be, in some ways, left behind and destroyed.
Yes. So when we cling to our mind, locate ourselves in the mind, whatever function we love, or all of them, it makes the transition very, very difficult. Winnicott was very aware of this. And he would know that in certain circumstances, the mothering figure could help hold that state for the baby in her own body. And by holding that in her own body, out of the indivisibleness between her and the baby's body, that transition could be better held. At certain ages, someone has to hold it with us, for us, and in us in a direct way. So the more the mom naturally is in the transitional space, or the mothering figure, the more that is communicated directly. Because the transitional space is not in my body alone. It goes beyond our body boundaries. Say yes if that's making sense. And then also the baby begins to do this by it's moving away and separating, and then coming back, the raw push more. It goes and separates, goes and separates. And in the separation, it's cultivating transitional space and has symbolic objects, teddies and whatever else, just like we all do. See all these pictures here? Transitional objects. They're just, not just, but they are transitional objects, symbolic objects that help open the doorway of transmutation, of change, of disintegration and integration, both personally and archetypically. That making sense? And so this attunement is one of the most basic dramas we have, this non-verbal, non-conceptual attunement to each other at this level of experience. So we're going to hold that for a moment. So with that understanding, I'm going to go back to the paper, okay? This okay with you guys today? It's getting boring. Keep you entertained. So this paper, because Erin had told us about a dream she had, I think it was, or you wrote a paper or something. It was a meditation. Do you remember that by chance now? Because I forget it. Would you just say a little bit? Because it was the way she described it, because when Erin's talking, she often talks out of her experience, so it has a direct effect on me.
Okay, this is going back a ways. It was
2011.
Yeah, exactly. It was during a Friday meditation, and I don't remember what we were talking about, but everything was black for me, and out of the darkness appeared the Dark Mother. And just as we have all heard her described, her hair was standing up on end, she was standing on one leg, and she was gliding toward me. And she held in her hand a curved blade, and really laughing, she just cut my head in one fell swoop right at the neck, and my head just fell off. It was very real in the meditation. And she catches it with her other hand and places it in my heart. And I was still having the astonished thought of my head is gone. And the thought is coming it's coming from my head in the heart. And I just watch, because I can't really think from that place anymore. It's not really watching, I'm just in it. And then
no longer witness consciousness.
No longer witnessed at all, yet aware where my head is, which is a very odd combination. Then, with the same glee and this wild laughter, she proceeds to cut my limbs, almost like pieces of meat, just cut, 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 very quickly, with no hesitation at all on her part. And I watch. I am not able to move as each limb is cut. And I can see the flesh beneath the skin, and it's my flesh, and that's horrifying. And then I am just lost in that position, almost frozen, but no movement is even in there. And then the meditation ends, and I am still not moving. Most people leave the basement and are gone, and I'm still not moving because I'm all fragmented, I'm all apart. And I see in there some light that is infused within the flesh, that is beneath the flesh and in the flesh. And a friend comes, because I'm not able to do this myself, but a friend comes and just holds that space with me without my ever saying anything. And everything comes back together. There's a reintegration of my body as my body. I can feel it again. There was never any pain in any of that. And afterwards, I come up out of the basement and eventually walk outside and open the big door and walk outside. And I'm walking home, and the same light I could see in myself, I could see in everyone I passed. It's rush hour and people are coming to work and walking their dogs. The dogs held the most light of all, which was just beautiful to see. You know, they're on the leash, and their owners are controlling them, and yet they have all this light. So that's what I remember.
Thank you so much. So beautiful. And this is why, as therapists, to integrate ourselves with ancient thought is very helpful in mythologies, right? Because when you hear this, you recognize it for what it might be, rather than something else it might not be whatsoever. You with me? So it gives a working frame, powerful frame. And one of the comments too, in the Gadaba Tantra, there's only one real practice that comes out of this Gadaba Tantra, and that is to bring our mind into our heart. It is the really only, this big sick thing, it is to bring our mind into the heart essence, right? Bring our mind down, which is a practice we can do right now for a moment. We'll bring our mind down. It won't happen the first time, but after you do it 100 times, you really get good at it, bringing your mind down into the heart. And with that moment, awareness and your mind are entering non-duality, oneness. Got that? Now, I'm just going to pick this talk up again. And her dream, which is not a dream of mind, but a dream of a manifestation of awareness. It's an apparitional dream, right? Some dreams are of our mind, and some dreams are apparitional dreams, meaning it is primordial awareness manifesting itself in a very direct way, experientially teaching us everything. And this is also, we're doing this now because with Lama Norla coming and presenting the Chode empowerment and the Chode practice, that what she describes is the Chode practice and the openingness of luminous light in a very direct way. But a little preparation helps. So I appreciate Erin's sharing of her meditation experience, which is the experience of the symbolic body being cut through, or the body, both the flesh and the energetic body, or cutting through in the context of the Troma Nagmo, the Dark Mother, primordial awareness itself. It was both beautiful and completely informing about the archetypical process within us and around us, and unfolding and expanding this process of luminosity. At one level, her description is a description of the Chode practice, and this is a practice that Kunzeng Dechen Lipa and Rinchen Dorje have presented here often, and the healing Chode of the Troma, the Dark Mother, and it's also the practice that Lama Norla will be presenting. And again, his practice will be focusing on the Vajrayogini from the Kagyu tradition, which is Talopa's bringing the Dakini, the feminine experience, this way. Feminine experience meaning direct perception, gnosis. In the Chode practice, the body, both the physical body and the symbolic body, is symbolically deconstructed and luminously shines through in the felt fullness. The practice is central to the teachings of Manchig Lamdram. There's her picture right over there. A Karma Dakini, and a teacher, Pandapa Sanjay, who was called the Lion of the Siddhas, and we also love a lot, and the founder of the Chode tradition. This making sense how we're framing this right now? Say yes, okay? So this practice follows also the teaching of the Pajna Paramita, where form is emptiness and emptiness is form. And as taught by Pandapa Sanjay, and also the importance of the luminous, that this openness, this space, which can feel like emptiness or no-thingness, it's not nihilism, it's not like an empty head, empty box, empty, but it is light. It is light coming and radiating. So luminous form or one. And ultimately, it is flesh as light. Ultimately, it is the flesh as light. Say yes if that's making understanding for you. Right? Right? Now, the Vajravas body, or the body of light, becomes manifest through the dissolution that takes place within the practice of Choj in the Vajrakalaya tradition, these cutting through traditions, which means where we learn to use awareness itself to cut through the obscurations of our mind, and to also awareness itself to cut through the obscurations and the of situations. So it's not only an interpsychic phenomena, but also it works in circumstances where you have the power of awareness to cut through shit. And you realize the ultimate nature of mind, which is awareness, when you free yourself from a lot of objective fixations, right? So you're trying to free yourself from objective fixations, and here's this cutting through that just really undoes us. There's a disintegration experience, and going with the disintegration experience, a lot of objective fixations are dissolved. Say yes if you understand that. If you have a little bit of OCD, which we all do here, it really helps undo the obsessive-compulsive state, which is such a contemporary phenomena. It's incorrect to think that nothingness is ultimate alone, but it's this natural luminosity, this openness as light, shining through and manifesting everything, including our own personal awareness and all these circumstances like dogs. As you know, when we allow the archetypical dimension to arise within, we can be in transitional space. In fact, it's the doorway of the transitional that opens this up, and many of the Jungian scholars also understood where do the archetypes, even from a Jungian place, take place. It takes place in transitional awareness, and even that there's a field phenomenon in Jungian thinking, and the medium is the field. Jung was preoccupied first with the mind and projection. How do we constantly project the old narrative on those we know and love, repetitiously, undauntedly, relentlessly? How do we project onto others who we know and love these never-ending historical projections, right? And there's a medium, which is a field phenomena medium. And through that, he started to understand that beneath that medium of projection is this more powerful medium of the field itself, which he called the self. Say yes if that's making sense. Yes, very important, okay? Now, we're covering a lot today, but that's okay. So, for it's in this intermediate area of experience that the archetypical dimension manifests. So everybody loves being archetypes in meditation or chanting, and then they forget about it, right? Then they go into their ordinary life armed with their mind alone. This is true. This is true. This keeps us all in business. Including ourselves, we do it too. You know? Right? Don't we do this? We go into it with mind alone, okay? Then we can't wait to meditate or be with the group, because then we can feel the field, okay? And they become sacred spaces where we can be, right? I look upon that cynically. I really do. I look upon it cynically. It's good as a beginner, but really, it gets old after a while. You don't mind me saying that, do you? You know? The sacred place is our own awareness. The refuge is our own awareness. In these teachings, the refuge is your own awareness. That first issue I had with Swami Muktananda was I was taking refuge in him. And he says, you're going to be fucked. This is not the way to start. Take refuge in your own awareness. How could he talk this way? You follow what I'm saying? Now, so if the idea manifests in your mind alone, then the result will be ideation or dissociated fantasy alone. So how do you know whether this is a dissociated fantasy or an archetypical thing? One way is you feel the field. You feel that presence arise. When a person's sharing that experience, the presence arises within you, right? You know? A creative unfolding of primordial awareness breaking through Breaking through sounds nice. God, I'm having a breakthrough. But breaking through is really painful because you're disintegrating at the same moment as the breakthrough is taking place, or shining through experientially, manifesting within you as you cannot come from the mind alone. Everybody okay with this? Breaking through, breaking through. What an example of breaking through. Just like circumstances come through and cut us up. Are you with me? This doesn't mean everything happens for the best at all. Don't take that trip on this statement. So now we're going to talk again. That was the yogic point of view. And we're going to talk about the same thing from the fragmenting body, from the psychoanalytic point of view of Lacan Winnicott. Exhausted? Are you getting something from this? Okay? So now we're going back to Lacan Winnicott, right? Because all this stuff is the same stuff. I consider Winnicott a master of awareness. I consider Lacan a master of awareness, just like I do the yogis, right? Now, let's get their little pictures up. So let's look at disintegration and the reintegration process. So now we're again taking a look at disintegration and reintegration. Have you ever had a disintegration process? Did you have one when you were a teenager? Did you have one when... So every phase of life there's a disintegration. Then your system reassimilates it, and then it disintegrates again, you know? Sometimes it gets extreme. The extreme of disintegration is what? Death. Death. So the disintegration and reintegration process that is repeated in the unfolding of the awareness field, which is the field of fruition. Even as Aaron describes that dream, you can feel that the very process is fruitional, right? The very process, the very method, what is taking place in that dream is fruitional, huh? The disintegration is the opening of a fruition that we quite haven't experienced yet. The fragmented or fragmenting body is an early understanding of Lacan and is intimately connected to his discovery of the mirror stage of development. And the mirror stage is not that of a literal mirror, but the mirror of the environmental reflection and attunement. All of us, all human beings, me and you, have been locked into the mirror of the other. Yes, locked into the mirror of the other. Isn't that a great statement? Just say it for yourself for one moment. Locked into the mirror of the other. It's not easy to leave that mirror. Not easy to cut through it. And if you're in your mind alone, it is really, really hard. As we grow, and we all grow into this world, we grow into this world. That's why I don't like the word deludedness, as I complain about in that paper on the view of Eastern philosophy that negates personalism and humanism. You know, a baby comes into this world, and the baby's view is an unfolding developmental process, right? Slowly but surely, there's mom, there's so-and-so, there's auntie so-and-so, there's this or that. And it's a complex unfolding of perception over time. Some of us are just getting there, right? Oh my God, here I am, you know. And so to look at the deludedness as one goes from awareness and starts to experience objects, and one starts to experience the vivid liveliness of objects of awareness, is the most natural process. So Aaron's apparitional dream for me is the most natural process of maturity. When we start seeing the light in all the phenomena within us and around us, and we see the light in dogs, and we see the absurdity of situation. You follow me? It is a developmental process, and the word deluded does not give it full grace and beauty of what it is. This ongoing unfolding of human perception to experience the indivisibleness between us and others, which everybody has done at some point in their life, or you and I would not be here right now. That natural process of oneness, and then it disintegrates, and then we reintegrate it at another stage, and it is a consistent, ongoing thing of disintegration and reintegration, step by step. Say yes if you don't have to believe this, but do you understand what I'm saying? You want to think about it this way. Let's continue just a little bit more now. So, through events in time, sorry, it takes so long. Through events in time, through the awakening of awareness of this, we might even say the Kundalini. All the Kundalini means is the energetic dimension of awareness. Huh? There's an energy in all this. There's a chi in all this. There's Shakti. There's pulsation. There's sublime vibration. So part of awareness is this unfolding of the sublime vibrations. And that's when someone's speaking from awareness and within awareness, you feel the pulsations arising in our own bodies, right? And sometimes this pulsation is so strong, it stretches and we feel it pushing us and stretching us and reorganizing us. And sometimes it can be scary as we feel ourselves falling apart, and then just as quickly we reintegrate again. So through the events and time, through the awakening of awareness, the light begins to break through or cut through or move through and manifest through our container. And also the container of others. So in doing so, the container is deconstructed and reorganized as the body of light. Is this a once and for all thing? It happens over and over and over. I've been learning a lot of astrology from my son, and he's really a great astrologer, I say without any prejudice whatsoever, and not an ounce of nepotism, okay? But in terms of Saturn being the planet of both disintegration and integration. So, like Saturn is. So when this occurs, we're able to be aware of this experience of resonance. So resonance becomes more and more direct, right? Resonance is not the parenting of a mirroring word. It feels like you're feeling this right now. It's really good to have that, but that's not the mirroring of direct perception and resonance. That making sense what I'm saying? Now, so the transformation experience of the fragmenting body arises in the symbolic area of experience. It's not imaginary. So that wasn't an imaginary phenomena that Aaron was describing to us. And it's not an internalization, like sometimes there are internalizations like that, but that it's not internalization, or it's not even a memory. It's important to understand that as therapists, okay? Rather, the symbolic of the function of the psyche is visionary and apparitional. Say yes if you understand that. Elizabeth, what does that sentence mean?
That the experience comes through an opening and a merging with the wisdom of the field. It doesn't come from a thought or even a conglomeration of experiences. It comes from an openness.
Yes. That's great. Skip, what does that mean also? What does that mean that it's symbolic? Like, it means it's pointing to something else? What does this mean, this symbolic dimension that an apparitional dream is? What does that mean? Or apparitional in meditation? What does that mean?
So,
And why is that useful to know that as a psychotherapist?
so I'll try and answer from two viewpoints.
Okay?
So the first would be my own experience.
Own experience, okay?
And in my 30s, I had a similar experience to what Aaron was describing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it over and over and over again, probably 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to make it something to work on in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we worked on it as a dream over and over and over again. And the experience would not go away until I quit trying to make it something and entered it.
Entered it. Key word. You entered it.
And then in entering it, it had a transformational quality which I did not understand at all, but it re-initiated a spiritual quest.
Beautifully described. And the second?
Then as a clinician, so I was working with a therapist at the time that I really liked. She was really, really good at what she did. But this realm was closed to her. And the fact that we couldn't process this was one of the reasons I quit working with her. Because I already had still do, a tendency to get concrete operational. And this opening was being concrete operationalized and kept closing. And thank goodness the grace wouldn't leave me alone. And it kept coming back till I could get into the opening. So as a clinician, I want to listen, where's the dream coming from? And try and hold all the possibilities at one time. Otherwise, I may foreclose an opening rather than moving into it with the client.
Beautifully described. Sorry,
and at the same time, in my eagerness, I don't want to create it as a symbolic, archetypical experience when it's not.
When it's not. Absolutely. Really. Would you mind writing on this? Would you consider, I know you're very busy, but would you consider writing on this differentiation? Let's hold awareness. We're almost done. And we'll do more experiential stuff next week. But let's enter back into awareness. So these are not ideational fantasies, but realities of the multidimensional awareness contained in mind and body, contained in time and space, and contained and manifested in duration. The imaginary, to use that word, is a mental schema, internalized objects, psychological complexes. You want to know the felt sense of them, huh? The difference. And the symbolic is an actuality of the apparitional dimension of awareness, the subtle body of light, or the Sambhogakaya dimension. And the real, to use this language, is unborn, undying Vajra awareness, potential space beyond words and language, Dharmakaya. So the more we mystify some of this stuff like the Dharmakaya, in some kind of way you have to be a super duper person, that type of mythologizing doesn't really help at all. May have business implications. But actually, all this is totally close to us, completely close, and having that assumption and that prejudice is really useful for ourselves and for other people. If you have to have a prejudice, and the experience of awareness, let's go into it now if we can. And if we stay in it just a bit, we'll start to experience the timeless quality of it. And we'll feel ourselves both in time and the disintegration that time and circumstances always bring, and the possible reintegration. But we'll be experiencing it from the timeless viewpoint. This is pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and everything else is extra and ornamentation. If you know this much, just this much is knowing everything. You feel the timeless state. You'll cultivate the timeless state. If you think you have to be better than you are, you will leave timeless awareness forever. If you think you have to improve, you will leave timeless awareness forever. If you think you have to be a better person, you will never live in timeless awareness. If you think you and I, just for me also, I have to have the right circumstances to be in timeless awareness, I'm fucked. At that point, if I think I have to have the right circumstances, it's not quite right yet. Who is the teacher? In terms of they speak about the circumstance, the teacher is our own awareness itself, manifesting. The guru is the light of our own awareness. So we focus on timeless awareness, we go back to timeless awareness, and we experience disintegration in timeless awareness, where it's leaving work, leaving a group that you've been in with for a long time, getting seriously shitty sick. You with me? You can hardly move. Having your phone interrupt. All those conditions we cut through, that we can live in timeless awareness, ongoing continuity of beingness. And then we'll go through disintegration. We'll actually feel disintegration taking place around us and through us and in us. And we'll feel the timelessness of us. Appearing and disappearing. So the yogis practice the chode in order to bring forth this dissolving. Of course, you don't really have to practice the chode to bring about dissolving. Dissolving completely and naturally happens in the unfolding of our life events, and especially opens in a way that we can know it for what it is if we have the accessibility of transitional space, this place where we're aware of awareness. If awareness of awareness is available, which also can be called the arising of the kundalini, because there's this arising of the energy, because it is the vital energy. It is vital energy, even at the moment of death. And the unfolding, the karma, is dharma itself. The unfolding of my karma is dharma itself, as if we have to look for dharma. I don't know my dharma yet. That's a diluted statement, to use that word, dilutedness. It is my life itself as it's unfolding. Then it can lead us to natural liberation. Because in the natural unfolding, whatever I'm experiencing it in this place. And I do not mean that everything happens for the best, but rather through whatever is happening, natural liberation is available in that moment, can take place. Everywhere, every place, all the time. Appearing and disappearing. That's where we began. Appearing and disappearing. Dissolving and evolving are the manifestations of indeterminate awareness. Indeterminate awareness. And try as might to predict it, it's not going to work. I've been having these conversations with Richard Moss. In fact, he gave a little talk after this meditation, and I'm having him give another one soon. He's a brilliant person, extremely nice person, extremely kind person. Sometimes they don't always go together, but for him it fits. And he's really one of the people that won the Nobel Prize for the intergovernmental thing with the weather. And talking to him about climate, is a horrifying experience because of predictability and how he understands predictability and how we used to use the normal curve and finances use the normal curve, and how the normal curve sort of exists but really doesn't exist really and truly in the ongoing flow of circumstances, and how all the extremes happen so far beyond probability, like the financial crisis in 2008, whatever it was like 1,000,000,000 to 1. All these things they're imposing, and fractals, something I never wanted to know about, but I'm learning about. The terror of fractals, the terror of unpredictability. Try as we might. Here we are. So disintegration is required for integration. And some sort of way, if we don't let go in the process, we can continuously disintegrate. Disintegration it keeps looking for ground. But to have the ground of awareness ourself, then it's not so, as Heidi used that word, terrifying. Winnicott would often say that we're living in health in this intermediate area, the third zone. Maybe it's time to stop for right now. And we'll pick this up again of disintegration. We'll pick this up again next week, and we'll go again into more about disintegration and primary disintegration. So let's just sit for a moment. I hope everybody enjoyed this. And let's break into triads. This time we're going to do 3 people, okay? Like we used to do in the training programs all the time. Everybody having a good time? Is this okay with you guys going over this again? Is this okay with you? Hello? Hello? Is this okay with you? So you want to know how to look at people when they're disintegrating, right? If every disintegration is a bad thing, so let's pay attention for a moment. Okay, I'd like you to hold the feel with each other. And so as you and I know too, our mind is resistant to the unformulated, predictable, incessant flow of events, the relentless surge of events, and so does not go along with disintegration, reintegration process, and becomes frozen in time. That's why Erin even mentioned that moment of frozenness she was in for a little bit, That frozenness, which does happen, and then it starts to thaw again, and we feel the flow again, right? So let's just hold this awareness. And you don't want to cultivate yourself to be a victim. If you cultivate yourself to be a victim, and you think about yourself as a victim too long, sometimes you have to know that this took place. But as you make it an intrinsic part of your narrative forever and ever, one of the most difficult states of disintegration is freeing yourself from being a victim, especially if you've had it for a long time. So, disintegration isn't just a disintegration of good things and good times and good phenomena. Disintegration, sometimes at its hardest, most bloodthirsty, like the demon goddesses, is giving up, perceiving ourselves and our life as a victim life. You follow that, what I'm saying? So hold awareness with each other. Let's invoke the Dark Mother, which is primordial awareness itself. Let's increase it, intensify it. Lacan would urge us, in his own omnipotence, to give up being the one who knows. And just hold awareness with each other. And see if you can enter in through your companion's timeless awareness. Even in emptiness itself, you will feel timeless awareness. That's why sometimes pointing out instructions help you see it. Oh, that is timeless awareness. Because there's a movement in it, and it's timeless at the same time. It's like time and timelessness. It's like movement and openness. Can you feel that in the other person, or the other two people? Can you feel that timeless space? Take the narrative of your mind, especially if it has a little bit of victim qualities to it. If not now, then. And bring it into this space. We almost have a little bit of leftover. It's like food. Food. For timeless awareness. And some of those texts, those tantric texts, when you're feeding there's a little feast, and you're feeding the demons first, the leftover demons, you're actually feeding them what remains. But not the remains of the food, the remains of what is not dissolved. Energy. Awareness metabolizes stuff. Allow yourself to use the force of your awareness to cut it. If it's still just like the Dakini cut. The practice of cutting. Like you're cutting it. You're cutting it with your awareness itself. Awareness cuts through our mind. It cuts through memory. It cuts through certain attitudes. It loves cutting through the superego, also known as the judge. Here comes the judge. Here comes dread. Dread. It's like a dread of hell. Sometimes you always use the phrase pat or pet. these yogis use the phrase, fuck it. Contemporary mantra. Serious. Stay with it. That goddess, that apparition, she cut it this way, she cut it that way. Now we're going to pause. And now, rather than part of a narrative, I want you to focus on the circumstances. Some circumstance, either here or there, but a circumstance. I'd like you to focus the energy of the triad on that circumstance. And just like you've been seeing people who've been speaking going down into their bodies, the different levels of speech, vibration, to the place of this, where it arises naturally, it is also the place of the sankalpa. That is where the will that is not mental exists. Sankalpa. Hooked to the energy, spanda. See if you can find that place in your body. And then with that, focus that sankalpa on those circumstances. Practicing disintegration, disintegratingness, the power of disintegration. You don't even have to say that mantra. It is an arising of an energy that's very primal. And you focus it. Determination. Dissolve the circumstance. Cut through it. When it's within your own mind, your own story, you can take it and bring it into the heart, the fire of the heart, and metabolize it, right? We did the first. When it's outside of you, use the power. You can also focus that power on some of your own structures. You have to do it though with love. That's the catch-22. You have to have the great affection and the great compassion. You with me? If not, you can get stuck even deeper. So it's a tricky process, right? So yes, if you understand. It's not sentimental, though. This is not a sentimental. It's really feeling the great compassion, which is the possibility of extending into the present, into the past, and into the future, within ourselves and within circumstances. So we can think of that mantra, Om Bodhicitta Masuka Yana Datu Ah. We're going to start to end up this part right now. end up, notice, even as you're ending, if you're not in timeless awareness, what they call the Vajrakamara, that's a feeling of unborn, undying, continuity. Anybody feel that? Carol, would you describe your experience, please? I'll pass the mic to Carol.
The experience was that a lightning bolt came from above and just split my whole body in two parts. And the bolt went down into the earth, and then it was like it's many rivulets of blood just kind of seeping into the earth, and then I was surprised to feel that I felt more spacious, more open, more just and out of those rivulets of blood, a tree was rising up, coming up, where the lightning bolt had been, and it feels like the world tree is born, the tree of life is born out of that disintegration, and I just, it feels immense. I don't, just so light-filled, so heart-filled, so open and spacious, and because my life feels like it's falling apart all over the place, every aspect falling apart now, and being reconstituted in ways I have no idea yet.
Thank you so very much. And one of the great texts actually over there is called A Boat from the Heavens. On the Vajrakalaya, it's this boat coming down. Quas. Thank you. So we'll hold awareness a little bit more. And let's see. Let's have Martha. Martha. I really appreciate everybody talking from their experience. It's so helpful.
Well, I'm still sitting in Carol's description of her experience. I felt like I was almost living it with her. My own experience sitting here was I felt I did feel the timeless awareness of the people I'm in the group with. I felt almost as I was breathing through them and they were breathing through me at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. And it was also I pulled up the traces of victimization. And I couldn't remember an exact thing, but just that sense of being a victim. And I felt the cutting through and then the disintegration. Like I've had this feeling before of like dissolving, like in little, like a rainstorm or something, where little drops are cascading down. Yeah.
And she describes a trace. So sometimes there's not a narrative, right? So as things go, the narrative disappears, and what remains is the trace. So sometimes it's just this trace, like a subtle smell almost. It's the trace, and then that trace is which is hit. Thank you. Maybe Kathy Kreische over there, who's new to this seminar. See, and just go into your experience and just briefly describe what happened.
Well, I brought the situation to our group here, and somehow you mentioned something about bringing it into the heart, and at that moment I could feel it in the heart. I could feel my heart, and there was just this sense of it holding there in the heart. And I kind of wanted it to move, but it kept just holding there in the heart. And as people were talking their experiences, it's sort of released. And then there's a little, the mind comes in like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? And then letting it go, and then things just kind of relax. And so there's less of a focus, but it feels a locus is right there.
Beautifully said. Let's pass the mic back. So we're going to do one more little practice as we end up today. And it's the most common of all practices, and it's an embrace, okay? But I'm going to have you embrace your companions this way, if you don't mind. I'd like it not to be sentimental, okay? I'd like the embrace to have a little bit of a teeny formal quality, not too formal, just enough. And as you embrace that person, I would like you actually to embrace them, and I would like you to transmit the heart energy into their heart, okay? So you're going to pull the person a little bit, both can be pulling each other, and you'll feel that movement towards, right? And that movement towards is not just pulling physically, because it's really beside the physical. It's a way of transmitting the light and the energy. You're just going to pull that person, and then you feel that release of the heart energy, because there's a lot of energy in the heart. And you can just feel yourself, and one at a time, if you don't mind, guys. Just one person. Oh, you can do three. Okay, you can do three. Do three. Do three, sorry. Do three, then do one at a time. But feel your capacity to release the heart energy in both the embraces, the group, and you'll feel the energy going up and down the body. And your mouth can be open at times, because the mouth helps bring you into that sankalpa frame again. But you really want to touch the body, where it's literally the heart touching. It is a very direct transmission, if possible. And as you separate from the transmission, notice that the heart element is still there. Releasing the energy. Releasing the energy. And you notice as you release the energy, more energy comes to you, especially from the back. And you can have feelings here, but it's not simply it's the focus on the felt sense of the energy passing from your heart into the other source point. Then you might discuss what that's like as you finish your experience. And sometimes when you do this practice, it is really a way of transmitting the heart energy to a person, which is great for you and the person because there's more light. But also it's a way of helping dissolve the traces. 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 I also very much loved Erin's description as she's sitting on the, after meditation and she's in this state with the intensity of it. Then a person comes and sits next to her and helps hold it with her. So, as we know, two awarenesses are better than one. And it's not really good to think that only great yogis can do this. You with me? That's a mythology. You with me? It really is a myth. It may have been a useful myth at one time, you know, but it's a myth you want to deconstruct. The sooner the better. Great. Okay, we're going to do one more extension as everyone completes. Which is the great compassion is extension, as Young Tung Rinpoche, a great master, said so clearly. We're going to extend to everyone's families this morning. Now, having done this, we're going to spend the next 2 minutes begging for help. Okay, you ready? We're going to beg for help for a few minutes. Is this okay? Help me, man. And see how you feel after a while, okay? Thank you guys so much. See you guys next week.